Hello, God bless you. Let me quickly drop this here to enlighten somebody. I want to talk about understanding the voice of God, not hearing the voice of God. Understanding the voice of God. These are two different things entirely. Understanding and hearing. Everybody hears the voice of God, but only few understands the voice of God. Pastor, what are you talking about? For instance, when you hear dogs barking, you hear the sound of the dog, but you don't understand what the dogs are saying. But it takes somebody who have a deep understanding about animal languages to be able to decode what the dog is saying. So there's a difference between hearing the voice of God and understanding the voice of God. It is the understanding of the voice of God that is now more deeper. Everybody can hear God, but it's not everybody that can understand the voice of God. When Jesus was here physically, he would preach to the people in parables. Only few will understand what he was saying. So it's not about hearing the voice of God, it's about understanding the voice of God. What we lack is understanding the voice of God. God may be speaking to you several times, but yet you will never understand what he's saying. So you must develop yourself, work on yourself, work on your spirit, work on your flesh to be able to come to a conclusion in the spirit where you now understand the voice of God. Now, for instance, you are dating a young man. Every little thing, the next thing he can do is to give you a dirty slap. And as a young lady, you are not even aware that that slap is the audible voice of God. You still go about asking prophets, what is God saying about this, our relationship? It's a sign that you only heard the voice of God, but you didn't understand his voice. The understanding of that voice is that dirty slap is a sign. Is a sign that this one is a no-go area. So we must work on ourselves to the extent where we can now understand the voice of God. It is not your flesh that God speaks to. God speaks to your spirit because God is a spirit. God speaks to your spirit, and your spirit brings the information to your flesh. Your flesh will be able to understand and interpret that voice that comes to it and made a voice out of it. Okay? For instance, you are dating somebody, and all of a sudden that you have this urge within you to say, I want to pray if this is the will of God. That word, if, is already a question mark. You must now begin to ask yourself, which part of me is not in love with this girl? It may not be your flesh that is not in love with that girl, it may be your spirit. Because right now it's about your spirit and her spirit. Okay? Your spirit has investigated her spirit, and God has given a message to your spirit to give to your flesh. Now your flesh is thinking, maybe this one is not the right person. So don't throw away those feelings when you suddenly want to know about that business before you invest your money. Don't throw away that feelings. It is the voice of God. You know, many a time people call it, I feel something. Something told me. When you are now matured in the spirit, that thing you call something is no longer something. It now becomes the voice of God, the audible voice of God. There was an instance in the Bible where God spoke to Jesus, and the people around him said, it thundered. They had thunder, but Jesus didn't hear thunder. Jesus had the voice of God. You must be able to interpret the voice of God in everything that happens around you. Don't take any single thing for granted if you are a spiritual being. If you are a spiritual person, nothing just happens around a spiritual person. You must be able to hear the voice of God. Look at it well, focus on that thing, and make sure you milk the voice of God out of that event. I am teaching you something that is very deep. I will continue next time. I pray that God Almighty sharpen your spiritual antenna.